Welcome, everybody. My name is Judy Mark. I'm the president of Disability Voices United. I am a parent of a participant in the self-determination program. We have been doing these SDP Connects for well over a year, maybe much longer than that, maybe even 2 years almost. I think we started in July of 2020 during COVID, and we have probably over 50 of them, dozens and dozens of them on our website, on our Interchange website, which you can find the link in the chat. Oh, I should also mention before we get started that you need to pick a language. So go on your screen, go to interpretations and choose English, Spanish, or Korean. We know we will be getting some questions in other languages, and so it's important that you choose your appropriate language. Just a couple of quick announcements. I know that we had said in our monthly newsletter that today we were going to be talking about participant choice specialists and having several of them present on their roles and responsibilities. And there are a number of them that were going on vacation and we couldn't get them all to join in. So Molly will have that for you at our next one in 2 weeks. Okay, so we promise that will happen. So because it left us with no topic, we do this on occasion every 4 or 5 months where we will just take everybody's questions because we often run out of time at our regular sessions when we have a presenter. And so we know that some of you are very new to the self-determination program, so you can ask the most basic questions. There is no question, there's no such thing as a stupid question, in my opinion, ever, but certainly not on SDP Connect. But you can also ask very technical, narrow questions. I cannot promise that I have the answer to every question. And the reason why I don't have the answer is because perhaps there is no decision that's been made by the State Department of Developmental Services about it, or perhaps it's the first time I'm ever hearing this question and I'm not sure. But what I will promise is that I will ask for you and I will let you know at the next SDP Connect, okay? And I'm going to write down those questions on this piece of paper here. I want to also introduce folks who will be helping me to answer some of these questions from our team. And by the way, if any of you disagree with one of our answers, if you're from a regional center, if you're an independent facilitator or an FMS, please feel free to chime in. Like, I don't know that I have every answer perfectly, or maybe I missed some sort of nuance of the answer. So please feel free to chime in. But the folks who will be helping me answer the questions today are our self-determination team here at DVU, and that includes Molly Kennedy, who is our self-determination program fellow, Tim Jin, who is our communication rights projects, that's a long name, but communication rights assistant director, and Nina Spiegelman, who's our director of policy. And the questions can be, as I said, very easy or very hard. You can ask these questions a couple of different ways. You can ask them in the chat, or you can ask them by raising your hand and we will unmute. We will allow you to unmute, okay? I also know that there's a Korean SDP Connect organization, which we're so happy to be working with closely. And they have actually submitted in advance a number of questions for today. So we're going to go back and forth between their questions and questions that people have. So I'd like to call on our wonderful interpreter, our Korean interpreter, Helen Park, who is going to be giving us some of these questions. Oh, and it's so funny. I just saw Mrs. Joy put in before I even saw your message in the chat, I had already known that we were going to be going to Helen. So go ahead, Helen. Mhm. Yeah, so reimbursements are not allowed based on the federal government's requirements for the self-determination program. So I know for sure that you cannot get reimbursed. However, depending on your FMS, and they do function differently, you can potentially get them to pay for it with a credit card that they use. That rule, I heard, part of the reason why I'm happy to be doing this today is because there is a Facebook group about the self-determination program that was set up by the state council. It's not monitored in the way where nobody's looking at it to make sure that accurate information is being shared. I see a lot of inaccurate information. I see somebody asking a general question and then the answers being provided are actually incorrect. So I beg you to confirm things, because you don't want there to be any misinformation out there. But there is nothing in the federal government rules that say that you cannot use a credit card. And in fact, in other states where they have self-determination programs, FMSs use credit cards all the time. And in some states, they actually give the credit cards they give a credit card number or a debit card number to an individual so that they can purchase what they want. So that is definitely not a federal rule. Now, are some regional centers putting in some rules that are different? It's possible. Are there has some misinformation gone out about this? Yes. But there is no reason why anything cannot be paid with a credit card. So I'm just going to start with that. It is really important that we press the State Department of Developmental Services to say to the FMSs, yes, you can use credit cards and you should be using credit cards so that people can purchase classes and items that they need to meet their goals. There have been workarounds on some things that have a timeliness factor, like summer camp. Like, a parent has to register for a summer camp on a very specific day and time. And if you don't register on that day, you lose the spot for the child. And what has been worked out, it's more complicated than it should be, in my opinion, but what has been worked out is that the parent calls the camp in advance, says, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to pay for the camp, but it's actually going to end up getting paid for by this other agency through a check. I want to reserve the spot for my son who has a disability or my daughter who has a disability in this camp. And when you receive the check from the FMS, I would like to get reimbursed. And that has worked out. I know it's actually really quite complicated. And I wish it weren't that way, but that has been one way people have worked things out with their FMS and with the camp. Everything else, though, should be done in a more timely way. Oh, Helen, you just came back to the English channel for some reason. That's okay, no worries. There you go, perfect. So the I think that there needs to be more clarity from DDS and to regional centers so that the FMSs feel like they can use a credit card to pay for things. I know that there's probably going to be a lot of questions about FMSs today. And I have said this before, that I know that folks are struggling with their FMSs. I hear you. My my concern is that we need our FMSs to succeed. And so I don't spend a lot of my time criticizing them. I try to spend a lot of my time trying to work through the problems, right? I meet with DDS about this. I know that some of the FMSs are meeting with DDS about resolving some of their issues. So I'm hopeful that things are going to improve over the next few months, but I know that there are problems. Thank you for that one, Helen. I'm going to now go to Ryan Duncanwood. Ryan, did you have a question? Oh, wait, real quick, Ryan. Some people couldn't hear Helen speaking in the question, and the reason is because you did not choose a language. Everyone needs to choose a language. So if you're an English speaker, you need to go down to to interpretations and choose your English, and then you will be able to hear what Helen says. Next time I call on Helen, I'll remind everybody to do that. Go ahead, Ryan. Do you still have a question, Ryan?
Ryan, did you want to type it in the chat?
Yeah.
Okay. Type it in the chat, and as soon as I see it, oh, there it is. I have a question about the California Democratic Party. We don't tend to talk about that at our meetings. Why don't you keep writing? Let me know what it is. Let me know what it is, Ryan, because I may or may not be able to answer it. Okay, Ryan? I just want to tell you that I just got a message from a parent who told me that they are actually getting reimbursed for some services from their FMS. So there you go. I was told by DDS that there is something in the federal contract, the waiver, that says there can be no reimbursements, and yet it is happening. So I stand corrected, and if one FMS is doing it, then all FMSs should be able to do that, right? It's not that there's different rules for different FMSs. Has anybody else seen a reimbursement happening by anyone? Okay. Well, I know it's definitely happening with one participant out there, which is great. All right, Helen, you go next. So reminder, everybody, choose English if you were an English speaker so you can hear Helen's question. Yeah. You can do a couple of things. First of all, I know I'm not trying to be flippant about this, but you can look for another FMS. And I know that that's like not an easy thing to say because many FMSs are not actually taking new clients right now. I just heard Mainsail has got a multi-month waiting list, maybe not till next year. So, I mean, that's obviously a very big problem that people are not able to get their FMS, get a new FMS. But if they're not getting responses, I would call your regional center, because it's the regional centers that pay the FMS, and your service coordinator should be reaching out to your FMS and saying, you are not being responsive to my client, and I need you to be. So, that would be my suggestion, is ask the regional center to help you. If the regional center declines to help you, well, there's a problem there. And then you should go to the ombudsperson at DDS and tell them that this is a problem. And right now it's Katie Hornberger, but it's as of mid-July, it will be Susie Rickworth, and they will have a bunch of new staff, and they should be calling the FMS and saying, you need to be more responsive. Thanks, Helen. I'm going to go to Ed, because I see a lot of activity in the chat, and maybe there's a question that we should try to get to.
Yes, there are several. From Melissa, I had heard through the grapevine that Aviana in Northern California is not taking new clients. Has anyone heard that?
I've not heard that. I heard that last year, but I have not heard that recently. Can anyone else confirm that? All I know is what I hear, randomly, that people are having a very hard time finding an FMS. They call through a bunch of them and they're not taking them. Miriam, do you have an answer for that one? Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I don't have an answer. I have a question.
Oh, you have a different question?
Yes,
Okay,
sorry.
stay unmuted because I might come to you next. But I have not heard that. I will try to check on that. Okay, guys?
And then if I can, before we move on, Judy, Ryan clarified his question in the chat.
Okay.
Can the regional center pay if I have a meeting in Los Angeles? Maybe for transportation or for lodging, he's not specifying. I think that's related to his activity with the California Democratic Party.
So every expense that you have, Ryan, has to meet an IPP goal. Okay, it has to meet an IPP goal, not a goal in your person-centered plan, but an IPP goal, right? So if your IPP goal has something to do with your activity and your work with the California Democratic Party, then you could try to justify it that way. For example, somebody kind of going on vacation, there's no way you're going to be able to justify that with an IPP goal. But if it's something, related to volunteer work, I guess it's possible. So you just make sure that there's something in your IPP goal about it, Okay, Ryan? Okay, let's go to Miriam. So go ahead, Miriam.
Hi, I have a question in regards to camp and social rec. So my son is in SDP, and I asked for funds for camp. And the coordinator, who has no clue about SDP, he asked me all these specific questions: which camp, what's the purpose of the camp, what is his schedule this summer, what days and hours is he available? What
was the purpose of them asking all these questions?
I don't know, to determine how much days or weeks of camp they are supposed to approve.
No, do you mean in the spending plan, or to put money in the budget for it?
To put money in the budget.
Yeah. So remember that in the budget process, the regional center can ask you a whole lot of questions, right? They ask you, because they're looking at establishing your needs. And so
that's fine. And I gave him, I said 3 weeks of this camp and a couple of days of this camp. And today he came back and said, can you please get me invoices? And is that something I need to provide in SDP? Because once I get the money in the budget,
it doesn't matter.
Do I have to actually spend it on the camp? That is my question. I mean, I will, but
okay, so I've not seen that they request an invoice, but they request sort of a statement showing how much it's going to cost. So an invoice is very different. So especially since you don't really get invoices from camps, so you would be able to send them the link. Here's the camp.
That's what I did.
And that's really all that they should be asking for. And they should be determining, does this meet his IPP needs? And then if it does, then that funding will go into his budget, but you don't have to spend it in that exact way.
Okay. And I didn't ask for anything outrageous. It's not like I asked for 2 weeks of a $5,000 camp, just simple church camps. But I was a little taken aback by his question about the invoice. Okay. but the problem is that these service coordinators are so much in the traditional system, they cannot make the transfer to SDP. They unfortunately have no clue.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Miriam. Melissa Jones, did you want to, I don't see, raise your hand, Melissa, so I can find you so that I can unmute you. Because Melissa put in the chat that she can answer the question about it. So I don't know where you are, Melissa, but go ahead and raise your hand and I will. Cindy, do you have a different question, or is yours about social rec? Cindy Cox. Go ahead. Go ahead and unmute. Oop, go ahead and unmute, Cindy. Okay. Okay, there we go.
Okay, sorry about that. No, I wanted to make a comment about the FMS. So the hardest part about our job right now as independent facilitators is we're getting lots and lots of phone calls every week for people who want services, right? The problem is we're now having to tell them that it's going to be a 6 to 7 month wait. And it's all because of the FMSs. I mean, yeah, it takes time to roll over. Do you know what I mean? To get, to go through regional center stuff. But FMSs like Mainsville, they're not taking anybody new till January. And, GT and Aviana are taking a few here and there, but it's not really fair for us as a company and as a group of IFs to say, oh yeah, we'll take you on, let's get everything rolling, and then say, oh, well, by the way, we can't really get you into self-determination because FMSs aren't taking them. So
that is so outrageous. That is completely outrageous.
It is. And so what we're really trying to, so one of our very, very first questions when we talk to somebody is, how patient are you? I know that sounds horrible, but it's like, we want to get you into the program. It's just not going to happen. And the other thing that is slowing down the process is a lot of the participant directed people that
Participant choice specialists.
Thank you. Forgot the name of them, have just started. So let me give you an example. So as an IF, we have one regional center who they have their specialists who are on board now, and the specialists are going back over the plans we've done for the last year and asking us to correct plans by adding more detail into the amount of spending that is written into this, the actual self-determination plan. So there's two problems with this. Number one, they're taking our time to go back and correct things that they think should be corrected. And number two, the person-centered plan has absolutely nothing to do with money. It has to do with people. And so those are the kinds of things that are just slowing the process down. And so my advice to everybody on here who's new, who's not in self-determination, you're just better off to almost just sort of steel yourself to the fact, get on board with somebody, get your name on a waiting list with the FMS, and do what you can while you wait. I don't see any way that it's going to start chugging faster.
So I urge you, Cindy, to not be telling people this. I urge you.
Like me to tell them.
I want people need to be fighting back on this. Like if we're out there saying, sorry, you're not going to be able to get in for 8 months or 9 months, then we basically are resigned to the failure of the self-determination program.
Well, we try to encourage them to, I know that this isn't fair, this isn't right. Here's the ways that you can go and complain about this. You know what I mean? In the different channels, but it isn't going to change. It's not going to change the FMS, whether they're going to take them or not initially. We still have them. If all of a sudden another FMS opened up and they started taking people, all of those people that for us, we've told, yeah, we can serve you, but you need to wait for the FMS, we'll move them over to any FMS they want. But it's still taking time. And I think that's where you're getting the frustration of people with FMSs, because they're not even taking their names. Or if they are, they're saying it's a big problem. I believe the FMSs are doing the best that they can. and they're trying to train new people, and they're trying to get new things. Now, I think this is a big open for discussion kind of a thing. If there's a different way it should be handled, I'm all for it, Judy, right? But I think but this is a big problem. This is a big problem. I think it's the biggest problem with SDP right now. So that's my 10
Right.
cents
So,
worth.
so here's my view. The biggest problem with the SDP is not that FMSs aren't taking new clients and are not doing a great job. There's a reason why FMSs are not taking clients and not doing a great job. They're underlying systemic problems with the bureaucratization. That is not a word Helen and Lorna can actually define because it's a made up word. But the fact that they're making, that regional centers and DDS are making this so bureaucratic, and that they're pretending like this is exactly the same as the traditional system, particularly on the back end where all the financial stuff goes on. Those are the reasons why FMSs are having problems. It's not the FMSs themselves, but the FMSs are not getting reimbursed for lots of expenses. They get a spending plan, so they pay for things, and then all of a sudden the regional centers are saying, "Oh no, we never said we paid for that," even though it's in the person's spending plan. And so we need to fix the underlying issues here. That's what I'm trying to explain, is like, it's not that we're trying to fix the FMSs. And so, maybe there's a 9-month waiting list to get on Mainsail, but if we don't correct these underlying problems, then those waiting lists will be a perpetual problem. And we have to fix the self-determination program. And so that's one of the things that we do when we come on these calls, and every 2 weeks, is we hear your concerns, we hear what you're talking about, and we use it in our advocacy when we talk to DDS, and we explain to them, here are the things that need to be fixed. So thank you, Cindy. Helen, I'm going to go back to you for your next question. Remember, everyone, click on the English channel so you can hear her question. Can a piano teacher, can somebody put, Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So that is a very difficult issue. So the independent, so there's differing opinions on this. There is, to be your child's independent facilitator or your family member's independent facilitator, there is a rule that says you cannot be providing any other services that are part of the person's IPP. And so some regional centers, and even we've heard DDS say this at times, that means that if you're also your child's IHSS worker, you cannot also be their paid independent facilitator. But being their music teacher is not the same thing as being their independent facilitator. You are their service provider, right? And parents of adults are allowed to be paid service providers. But if this is a child under the age of 18, you cannot be paid. So it really depends on the age of the individual and less about the IHSS connection. All right. Thanks, Helen. I'm going to go to Rick. Hi, Rick Cohn. Go ahead. Rick, are you able to unmute? You know what I'm going to do is I'm going to let Rick. Oh, there. Okay, go ahead, Rick.
I am having a terrible time with my FMS. I have been emailing and calling them with no response.
Yeah, Rick, I'm hearing, oh, I'm getting a little feedback, so I'm gonna mute you real quick. Okay, there we go. There is, we've been, oh, wait, I'm not actually, it's not you. Why am I getting this feedback?
Okay, let's look at who is speaking.
It's very weird. Okay, now it's gone. All right.
Oh,
No, it's not. It's not gone. Let's make sure everybody's,
right. It looks like everyone's muted, but I do hear that echo.
oh, it's very bizarre. Let's go ahead and mute everybody real quick, Ed, and then I'll unmute. Sorry for the folks in interpretation.
Do you want me to mute the interpreters as well?
Yeah, mute everybody.
Okay.
Okay, let's see if it helped. Yes. No. Hello, hello?
I'm not hearing one, are you?
Nope. Okay, that seemed to have worked. Helen, go ahead and unmute yourself. Let's see if it's coming on your end. Yeah, yeah, I can hear you, but I'm hearing an echo. It might be you.
Helen, do you have the meeting on multiple devices? Okay.
And it's only happening some of the time.
Helen, are you wearing a headset? That might be the issue. You should be wearing a headset. Are you?
I don't know if that's it. And it's only happening some of the time and not others. It's very weird. Yeah, it stopped. I don't know what's happening. All right, let's just be happy that it stopped for the time being. Who knows? Okay, sorry, everybody. Now it's back.
Judy, I think Cheryl's S21 plus, that's the one that keeps beeping. I think that's the one that's echoing from.
Oh. Cheryl. Okay.
Cheryl, is it possible to ask you to remove yourself
She's-
from it and come back
She's
in?
muted, but Cheryl's muted.
She is okay, got it. She keeps coming up though. I'm not sure.
All right, Cheryl, I apologize, Cheryl. I don't know who you are, but I'm going to remove you, and then you can come back in and see if it's a if it's coming from you. I apologize, and I'm not reporting to Zoom, so you can come back. All right, let's see if Cheryl. All right.
I don't hear an echo.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. So we'll see what that was about. That was very odd. Thank you. Everybody saw it with Cheryl. Appreciate that, guys. So I just want to make sure people are not able to unmute themselves if they're not a co.
Yep, I've just verified that.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. All right. So, all right, let's go back. We apologize, everybody. You know, Zoom is technical. So Rick was
I am
taught.
having a terrible time with my FMS. I have been emailing and calling them with no response.
I feel terrible for you, Rick, and I hear the same story from some other folks. What I would do is call your service coordinator and tell your service coordinator to help you. That is their job, to help you on these kinds of things. And they should be calling your FMS and saying, why are you not getting back to Rick? So if your service coordinator doesn't help you, then I would call the statewide ombudsperson, which I believe was in the chat.
And I'll put that information in the chat again.
Thank you, Ed. Thanks, Rick. I wanted to clarify something that was said earlier that a question that Aviana was not taking new clients. Aviana is not, it is correct that Aviana is not taking new clients from certain regional centers. They have stopped working in certain regional centers where they were not getting paid in a timely way. However, at other regional centers, they are immediately taking new clients. The FMS that has delayed taking on new clients till the end of the year is Mainsail. But all of the other FMSs should be taking new clients, including Aviana, except for a few of those regional centers where they have stopped working. Okay. I don't want people to not call Aviana if they're available. And the Office of the Ombudsperson is now in the chat. Okay, let's go back to Emma Villa. Go ahead. Hi, Emma.
Hi. I was trying to get unmuted here and I was getting all these messages coming up. First, Judy, I agree with you on everything you said about the FMS. I wanted to share it because I've gone through a very difficult time with our FMS, and I truly believe it was because of everything that you said. I loved my FMS, and I just felt really bad for them being stuck in the middle of all this bureaucracy. But the bottom line is the clients are the ones that end up paying, and
Right.
and there's not a whole lot we can do. We can't pay them more for the services that, or the bureaucracy that's being thrown on them. And so we
Right.
get stuck. So I hope we find a solution for that, because we're going to lose some good ones. For that, the other thing is, I think a lot of clients learn, I don't know, maybe I was just not aware, but with different FMSs, you may have a significant increase in employee burden, where it could really impact your budget, your spending plan budget. So if you're going from one that's under 18 and then something happens, then you have to find another one that may be available, and theirs is like 25%, and you're looking at a total year plan, that's thousands of dollars of increase for the same service. Nothing has changed. And I think that we need to be aware of that as clients when we're selecting our FMS, is what, when we're interviewing and seeing how we can afford that on the impact it's going to have on, our family members. But I'm hoping that we can find some solutions, because having been in self-determination, this is our third budget or third spending plan. And this has been the most problematic and difficult, where I would caution other parents, don't do it. It is not worth the time and effort and energy to fight for something that that is going to be so difficult. It's just been hard.
Well, what has changed in this year that didn't happen the previous 2 years, Emma?
The previous 2 years, our service coordinators knew self-determination, and they knew it from the traditional budget all the way to the spending plan.
Mhm.
So everything was smooth. This time we got those people that were our previous service coordinator and their supervisor got moved into different self-determination positions. So we got brand new people on our team that didn't know very much or were just learning, and they were trying to make it, or they approached it as a traditional model all the way through. And so it was so hard to try to, once you get the traditional budget and then to transfer it, it was like they kept wanting it to be traditional, and they kept trying to make it fit a traditional, and it wasn't. And so there were things that they were requiring were traditional, and it just was a mess. So it ended up causing our FMS a lot more hours, my IF a lot more hours than they had anticipated. And it wasn't that our requests were any different or any more challenging. Nothing with us had really changed. It was their process that had changed.
Right. So this is where regional centers are claiming to be tightening things up around the self-determination program in ways that makes us look like the traditional system. Requiring assessments and evaluations and all those kinds of things that are the medical model of disability, where we're trying to make sure that each service is fixing somebody in some kind of way, as opposed to empowering them. These are the things that we are trying to work together with all of you to push back on. And I'm really trying to be hopeful with our new SDP ombudsperson, because Susie Reckwarth has been a leader in this area to understand the difference between what the self-determination program is in the traditional system. And I'm hoping she'll set out some recommendations and some trainings for regional centers for them to understand that that is not the way it's supposed to work. So yes, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, Emma, and you're a great advocate. And, you know, I really appreciate all the work that you've done around this, but we have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, I agree. And I've taken that to heart to stand and write the complaints. And I'll be honest with you, when you already have an overflowing plate, right?
Yeah.
Just because of your child and their needs and all this, and then to add that on top of it, and to get up and do that every day.
Yeah.
It would be nice to have some, because where we are, we didn't have an OKRA for a long time. I think we just got someone back. So there isn't any of that additional support on filing the complaints that you have to file when you're getting denied things that are already in your IPP, that are already in the budget, that should be smooth through spending plan. There shouldn't be an issue, right? But now all of a sudden it's what you said. Well, we want to report or we want to evaluate. And it's like, wait a minute, you should have asked for that at the traditional budget,
Right.
at the IPP part. And so going through the process has been very difficult. And we believe in it. It's just, I'll be honest with you, it's really hard right now to have that belief of this being what I'm hoping that we can pull it through and that we don't lose what it's supposed to be. Because now I'm finding on the other end, as we go through this process, that a lot of the more knowledgeable, more experienced, stronger advocates are impacted. And so for me, I need someone that knows more than I do, or at least as much as I do, or more and more, but that will advocate, because, when it's your child, you have that emotional, and they're hard to find.
Yeah.
And so it's not just FMSs, it's those, because, I know we don't want to go to a traditional model, but I'm kind of wondering, where are the safeguards for the clients so that, you have the assurance that this IF is going to finish the job that they started and not just drop in the middle and say, I can't go anymore.
Yeah.
Because those things are occurring and we're stuck with, where do we go? We're stuck.
Yeah.
So
I completely agree with you. And I'm very, very concerned about the future of the self-determination program and all the things that need to be fixed. But the things that I can tell you is that DDS is hearing us. Nancy Bargman knows that the program is not being successful right now, and this is on her watch. And I've had conversations with her recently where she is promising to take a number of steps over the next few months to improve things. They've finally hired the permanent ombudsperson, and we're hoping that she will be able to move things forward in a productive way. There's also supposed to be a uniform training that is coming out for every single service coordinator, so that they know what the heck they're doing when they're working with a client who's in the self-determination program. So there's a lot that still needs to be done. I should say that all of these things should have been done years ago. We shouldn't be at this point. We are now 4 years since self-determination started. I got a memory from yesterday. Yesterday was the day 4 years ago that the federal approval of the self-determination program happened, which is the official day that the self-determination program began. And so, and the first 2,500 people were selected. So were selected a few months after that. So all of this stuff should have been dealt with years ago, and it wasn't. And now we're all paying the price. So
Yeah, and I appreciate your hard work. We were one of the first 2,500, and it took us a while to get in because they weren't ready for
Yeah.
us either. But
Yeah.
we were excited for that year and a half that it worked. It was wonderful for a year and a half, and
Yeah.
now it's hard.
Yeah, and now they're taking away our freedom. They're in the name of tightening things up. So yeah.
Yeah. I'm ready to say, okay, I want a pause break just for a minute.
Yeah. Thanks, Emma. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you.
I'm gonna go to the chat because I see lots of things happening. Go ahead, Ed.
Sure, lots and lots of questions in the chat today. Next question from Blia. Under the co-employer model, what do the FMS rates cover? Is it typical for the FMS to take an additional percentage from each employee's pay or from the individual budget for scheduling, cost, employee burden, or employee benefits?
Not employee burden, but employer burden. Yes, that is really common. When DVU does the trainings on the self-determination program, we talk about that when in the actual orientation, you'll see something on the 3 different models of FMSs, and they say, oh, it's only a little bit more money for the co-employer model than the sole employer model, so you might as well do the co-employer model. But what they're not saying is that these FMSs also have to charge for the liability insurance, because remember, they're now the employer of record. They have to charge for workers' compensation, and they have to charge for the employer's piece of the taxes. All of that has got to be in your budget. And there's lots of people who, even knowing that, still choose the co-employer model, and that's great. But you need to know what you're getting into. I can tell you that in the sole employer model, you have to arrange for the liability insurance and workers' comp. And so that's not something everybody wants to do. And so, people would rather, work with a co-employer model. So yes, that is exactly what they do, is they charge this percentage. And sometimes those percentages can be huge, and it really increases your budget. So you might want to look into how you can arrange for the sole employer model to save some of that money. All right, I'm going back to you, Helen, for another question. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is a really common question. So what the law states is that you cannot move more than 10% of the spending plan funds from one category to the other without the approval of the regional center. It actually uses that term. And the reason why is because the 3 categories are really different from one another. One is on living arrangements. So people who maybe are using an aid to, or a bunch of aids to live on your own in your own place. Another category is health and safety. So that's like maybe nursing care or, other kinds of health, buying a wheelchair or something. The third category is the category where people mostly use, and that's employment and community participation. So the reason why this is part of the law, because I helped to write it, is because let's say you are using, you have $30,000 in living arrangement expenses, and you want, that is supposed to be used to meet those goals of being able to live on your own in the community. You can't just move that $30,000 to another category. You just can't do that without having a conversation about why. Same thing with health. Let's say you've had $10,000 for nursing services, and you are feeling, you are doing better. You don't need a nurse anymore. You cannot automatically take that $10,000 and now use it to pay for a horseback riding program. And the reason is because they are for different goals in your IPP. They are for different reasons, and there needs to be a meeting that you have. Now, most of the people who want to change things are within that community participation, right? So those are people who are, who let's say you put in your spending plan that you're using money for an art class, and instead you decided to take a swim class. Those do not require any approval from the regional center. But remember that regional centers don't approve your spending plan anyway. But you do need to, at least at this point today, you do need to inform your regional center about the change. Doesn't mean that you have to change, that they have to approve anything. What regional centers are allowed to do is to review. You are allowed to review, they are allowed to review your spending plan. So let's say you decide to move money from an art class to a swim class. What they're allowed to ask is this a class that's available in the community? They need to make sure it's not a segregated class just for people with developmental disabilities. So they're allowed to ask that question, right? Once they get the answer to that question, then it's not a big deal, and it's just you're informing them. That is the way it's supposed to work. That's not necessarily the way it's actually working at the regional center level, where at the tiniest change, like from one little service code to another within that broad category, requires 6 or 8 different people to say, yes, this is okay, to what they call approve it. It's actually wrong. So I'm going to tell you that I've been talking to DDS about this problem for years now. They are actually coming up with a solution to this. Everybody should be thrilled. The solution is probably not going to be happening until 4 to 6 months from now. But what they're doing is they're changing the back end, the accounting system, so that there's only going to be 3 service codes. There's going to be the 3 categories of service codes, so that if you're moving from one type of class to another in the community, that you just need to inform your FMS, and that's all that needs to happen, right? So so that is, I know that Melissa, you have your hand up. Did you want to say something different about this?
Well, I want to correct a lot of things because I think I'm on the ground floor and we're hearing a lot of different things in what you're saying.
Well, you're not necessarily hearing the correct thing, but let me tell me what you're hearing.
Okay, so let's start with the question that the mom had about the piano teacher. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
If you are hiring your parent, your aunt, your brother-in-law to teach you how to play piano, they have to have their own business as a piano teacher and prove that they have their own business as a piano teacher. If not, you can hire them and say, I'm going to pay you $50 an hour or $100 or whatever their fee is to teach you a lesson. But they are considered an employee. So if they don't have their own business, like if you're hiring your friend to be a personal trainer, they either have to have their own personal trainer business,
Mm-hmm.
or they're an employee that you're hiring and paying $100 an hour to
Right.
be your trainer.
So,
Okay.
so that's not exactly the way works, Melissa. And that has
Well, that's
nothing
what-
to do, that has nothing to do with the self-determination program. That has to do with California labor law. Okay. So what California labor law says is that if you hire a person who's doing regular work for you, like your aides, would not be a piano teacher. A piano teacher could never be an employee. It would be somebody like your support staff, the people that come and help you every day. Those people are required to be your employees. They are required by state law. There's something called the ABC test, and they are required by state law to be your employee, and you have to pay their benefits and their employer. You have the responsibility of their employer taxes. For someone who's providing a service that's maybe weekly or irregularly, those people have to provide that service within the context of some sort of consulting that they do. So they can be a consultant. Not every consultant needs to necessarily have a big giant business, but you do have to register yourself as providing these consulting services. Even if you're a very minor consultant, I used to do a little bit of fundraising consulting. I had to get a business license from the county of Los Angeles or the city of Los Angeles. So I know that Carla's saying that those are the FMS rules. Those are not the FMS rules. Those are the state of California's rules. Okay. The state of California's rules there. So I'm trying to make it so that
they were asking the question about, can the parent teach their kid how to
right.
be
They were asking it, Melissa, within the context of if the parent is also the IHSS worker, can they provide both services? That's the context in which they were asking that.
I understand that. Okay, another thing, social rec. When the mom was talking about camps and the funding and all that, basically every single regional center does social rec different. So Tim can definitely say that Regional Center of Orange County is still sticking with we're not going to pay for social rec and you can use your respite money. Hopefully that's going to change. But when you're talking about and giving answers to parents, they think that this is an answer for all regional centers. And of course it's not. Harbor Regional Center is allowing one in traditional services. Harbor is allowing one social rec opportunity per quarter. That's their new rule. So basically, every single regional center approaches a lot of these things differently. And so when a mom is asking that question, it's not a blanket. It can be her answer, but it isn't necessarily the answer for everybody because every regional center is doing it differently.
And that is the truth. And the reason why the regional centers are doing it differently is because they've had no clear direction from DDS on this.
Right.
I say this all the time, when in the absence of direction from DDS, they're going to make it up. And they did that for a long time on the self-determination program. And now they're doing it on the restoration of social rec. We're talking about the intersection of social rec and the self-determination program. Right. But this is really for people in the traditional system are having these same challenges around getting social rec. And so it is true that everybody's doing it differently. And I'm hoping that there will be some consistency provided at some point in the near future.
Okay, here's another thing. There is one FMS that is allowing reimbursements.
Yes, I announced that. Yeah.
There is one that is allowing reimbursements at this point. My biggest concern as an independent facilitator is I am frankly appalled that independent facilitators are charging $2,500 to do a person-centered plan and the parents are not in self-determination. They don't have a budget. They don't have a spending plan. They don't have an FMS. And then they call somebody like me and somebody has already used all their money.
Yeah.
So I warn all of you that are starting this process, when you call and you interview an independent facilitator, you want to be assured that they are going to get you what I say to the finish line. You want to be enrolled in self-determination when you are done. And There is some independent facilitators on this call right now that have done that. And it is appalling to me that they are taking advantage of these families and they're not in self-determination. So
I 100% agree
jump
with
on that soapbox.
I 100% agree with you, Melissa. I have said this also in previous STP Connects, and I've gotten a lot of criticism from some of the IFs, not you, but some other IFs, that I believe that many facilitators are charging way too much. That I used for my son's person-centered plan, one of the great planners in the country, the person, Sally Burton Hoyle, who teaches people how to do person-centered planning. And she charged $800 for the PCP, from the pre-planning to the actual production of the plan. So that left us a whole bunch of money to do the spending plan and to do the negotiations of the budget. It should not cost that much. It should not cost that much, guys. And really be careful. This is my advice to all of you who are participants out there and family members. Be very careful. Ask people how, it really shouldn't take that long to do a person-centered plan. Couple of hours of pre-planning. This is for somebody, there are other people it takes longer, but this is for an average person who's probably an English speaker and has family involved in their life. It should take a couple of hours of pre-planning, a couple, 2 to 4 hours of meetings, and then, 5 to 10 hours of writing everything up and finalizing things. That's not a lot. That's not a lot of time. So thank you, Melissa. We have so many questions now that we have got to get to. Go ahead, Ed, in the chat.
Yes, we have a lot of questions. And again, folks, my apologies. We always get a lot of questions. It's not possible to get to all of them, but I do save all of them, just so you know. I have an anonymous question. Technology expense is on my son's revised spending plan. It just got approved last month. My son's old phone could not be upgraded. There was also a battery issue. I had to buy him a phone before his revised spending plan got approved on an installment plan. I paid the first 2 installments. My question is if the FMS can pay the outstanding balance for my son's phone.
As I've said many, many times, if everything in the spending plan must relate to an IPP goal. So it all depends on what's in the IPP and remember that the IPP is informed by the person-centered plan. So if in your person-centered plan, you have, I want to be out in the community more, but I need to be safe. And then we put that in the sort of safety goals or in the IPP, and you're using that phone to, contact people to make arrangements, for safety reasons. That's a legitimate expense. But if you're using your phone because you want to play video games on it or solitaire on it, no, that doesn't need an IPP goal. So just remember that everything you have in your spending plan has to relate to a goal. And if the goal is that we have to have a phone, we have to purchase the phone, and we have to keep the monthly fees for the phone in there, then yes. I should also just say really quickly that for people with disabilities, there are free phones available everywhere. In almost every community, you can get free cell phones by your counties for people with disabilities. So I always encourage you to look for places to get things for free and to use those what's called generic resources before you put things in the budget. So Melissa just put, yes, you can get your phone paid for. It's not that easy, guys. It's not like, yes, everything can be paid for. It must meet your IPP goals. And if you make sure that it does, then you're going to be far ahead and have far less disagreements with your regional center if you understand what it is they're required to look at. Okay. I'm going to go to Lisa Walker. Go ahead, Lisa.
Hi. Thank you for this chat. This is really helpful. I've been wanting this kind of dialogue for a long time, and this is really happening. And I think we need to do more often. I think this is very productive. Thank you.
Right.
And so I hear a lot of communication going back and forth is that some of it is DDS not giving the transparent direction to CVR, the regional center, that causing this SDP process. So do we have a task force or anyone that who could go ahead and communicate directly with the DDS and list the questions and ask them to address these issues? Just like when we first went into SDP process, we have to, the Medicare ask a lot of questions. We have to answer all those questions in order to get into self-determination program. Do we have that kind of a dialogue with the DDS so we can talk to them so that they can help in the long run, help the clients? Because the clients are who's suffering, right? It's not the regional center, it's not DDS. They take for a long time to do anything.
Yeah.
So do we have any questions that we can ask DDS? And if yes, then who could champion that task? But I think we need to have something like some kind of that team that who could it maybe it could be your team and address this was the question, but we got a direct answer from DDS and this is how it's going to be. And so then regional center should implement, and this is the date that they got clear direction to move forward. And my question is that we have SDP LAC committee, the local advisory committee, and that should be separate. But some regional center, those committee gets hired through regional center. So to me, that's a conflict of interest. When regional center says, you know what, your minor, the SDP is not for the minors, it's for adult. And if you don't have a budget and it's not worth it for you, they're creating this negative vibe. Or the regional center, the case managers don't even know what to do with. And they can help their client consumers. And then they're the one who's nominating this local advisory committee, and they're not even transparent about getting the committee nominated, or they select the committee in directly reaching out to the family member and say that, you know, are you interested in this position? And then when you talk to the committee member, they don't know anything about self-determination. How would that be effective when they're getting money from the state of California to promote SDP?
Right.
And
so, Lisa, I'm going to cut you all off only because we have so many questions and I get what you're saying. Thank you so much for those really excellent questions. So number one, who is directly speaking with DDS? Well, there's a lot of groups that are speaking with DDS. I know we do at DVU on a very regular basis about the self-determination program. There is also the statewide self-determination advisory committee, which are the chairs of all the local committees make up a statewide advisory committee, and they do meet, or at least some of them meet with DDS on a regular basis. I also know that the FMSs are meeting regularly with DDS to try to come up with some solutions from their end. And so, you know, there's a lot of people meeting with them, but there's not enough being done. And so, you know, I agree that we need to put more pressure on it. There's other things that we do besides meet with DDS. We also talk to the legislature, because remember, DDS is accountable to the governor, but also to the legislature, to the state Senate and the state assembly. And we testify, and I encourage other people to call in and testify before the committees that provide the funding to DDS to say, why isn't the self-determination program doing better? And what are you doing to remove the barriers? So I agree that those are problems that we have to focus on. For the local advisory committees, half of the local advisory committee at each regional center is appointed by the regional center, usually the executive director, but sometimes someone else. The other half are appointed by the State Council on Developmental Disabilities. And then in addition, the client's rights advocate also sits on it. I should tell you that when we originally had when we were originally writing the bill that became the self-determination law, we did not give the regional centers any appointments to the committee. It was all going to be outside. And it was part of the agreement of getting the bill passed that the regional centers felt that they needed to have their own appointees to these committees. So I hear you, Lisa. I hear that there is sometimes a conflict. But then again, I was one of my regional centers appointees to my committee, and I certainly had no conflict of interest. So sometimes they appoint people who are pretty damn good. Tim Jin is appointed by his regional center as well. So you can't say that's going to be all, that's the case for all of them, but I do encourage everyone to show up to your local advisory committee meetings, to complain if you have concerns, but to also compliment if the regional center is doing something well, or if you had a good experience, because maybe that good experience can be replicated in other circumstances. Okay, we're going to keep going because time is of the essence. I'm going to go back. Helen, did you have any more questions? A reminder, everybody, to choose the English language channel, or you will not be able to hear what Helen is saying. Go ahead, Helen. Right. It's 10. Yeah, it's 10% of the total budget. Okay. Yeah. So if you transfer more than 10% of so if your budget is $10,000 and you're transferring more than 1,000, then you do need to get approval, or you need to discuss it at an IPP. Okay. All right. And so Miriam is saying, no, not the total budget, but that is actually the intention of the law. So I don't know if it's not the 10% of any category. It's 10% of the total budget, I believe. I'm going to look that up. I don't want to tell anybody wrong things. I'm going to actually look it up in our wonderful little book. I'm going to look up the actual statute to make sure that I'm not saying it wrong. Because it is written clearly in there, and maybe I'm remembering it wrong, and Miriam is correct. Hold on. Let's see where it says this. I'm sorry to stop everybody. But I want to be able to hear the next question. I am not finding it easily. You know what? Can I ask you, Nina? Can you look that up and then we'll get back? That would be great. Thank you. We'll get back to you guys. We'll make sure that I'm not wrong, because I don't want to tell you all the let's see, adjustment may be made. Yeah, I'm not seeing it right this second. So, all right. Thanks, Nina. All right, we'll get back and make sure we have the right answer in that. Oh, Miriam got it in the chat. It says annually participants may transfer up to 10% of the funds originally distributed maybe to any budget category set forth in paragraph 3 of subdivision M. Transfers in excess of 10% of the original amount allocated to any budget category. Oh, all right, if that's what it says, I stand corrected. It is 10% of that category, more than 10% of that category. Okay, not service code, but category. All right, let's go to F. Aurora. Go ahead and unmute.
Sí, gracias. Buenas tardes. Yo también tengo más o menos esa pregunta. Si están hablando de una categoría, es un decir, en una categoría hay $1,000, se puede usar solo el 10%, pero esa categoría no se ha encontrado el recurso que se ha querido por razones de que muchas empresas o compañías, para ellos es nuevo este programa y como que lo desconocen. Si no se utilizara esa categoría, ¿qué pasa con ese dinero? Ahí tengo una pregunta. Y la otra es, también cuando se hizo el plan de gastos, tiempo pasado, obviamente, pero se llevó un proceso. Un artículo que se iba a comprar de tecnología estaba en un precio, ¿verdad? Vamos a suponer $500 y se va a gastar $500 en esa categoría, pero resultó que se pasó el proceso del plan de gastos, en que lo aprobaran, todo eso. Ahora el artículo cuesta casi el doble, pero ya estaba en el plan de gastos solo $500. No se pueden usar solo el 10% porque excede más de la cantidad de lo que ahora es el valor. Y ahora me están diciendo, no la FMS, sino quien está haciendo esto de la compañía de autodeterminación, que tengo que regresar a centro regional para que otra vez modifique todo. Entonces, aquí va a volver a salir afectado el cliente a retrasar todo esto, o qué está pasando con esta situación. Si me pueden explicar, gracias.
Yes, so this happens all the time. You shouldn't have to jump through a lot of hoops. Oh, Helen, were you able to hear that, by the way? Okay. You shouldn't have to jump through a lot of hoops to make those changes, but let's say you were buying a technology for 500, but when you went to purchase it, it was 1,000. You have to be able to transfer that $500 from another category to meet those needs, okay? So you do need to modify your spending plan. All it requires is an email to both your FMS and your regional center, just saying, okay, it's going to cost, we want this category of technology to be $1,000, and instead we're taking $500 from a class that we were going to take, and we're not going to use that anymore. If you are taking that money from a different category, though, it does need to be less than 10%. So that's why but usually that's not what's happening. Mostly what I'm seeing is people are changing things within that employment and community participation category. That's where a lot of the changes are happening, and that does not require an approval. It just requires notification so that the regional center knows about it. We're hoping, though, that this changes a lot over the next few months, and it's going to be a lot easier. Thank you so much. I'm going to keep with the question, one more question of a hand up. I don't know if I'm saying it right. Nushen Nazarian. You can go ahead and unmute.
Yes.
Hi.
I
Did you have a question?
I did not actually, but I don't know, maybe by mistake I didn't.
Oh, you put your hand up by mistake. No worries. No worries.
Sorry, but let me actually, I do have a question because I was thinking about doing the self-determination. I have not been attending to the meeting, but just wanted to know that, is it a good idea to move to that, because my son will be in an SLS in the next year or 7-8 months? And is this a good idea?
Yeah. I'm not going to answer that question. I'm going to let the people who are in the self-determination program answer that question. So Tim, if you could write up an answer and then just raise your hand when you're ready for it, okay? Because Tim Jin has been in the program since November. I highly recommend that you go into our library of SDP Connects and look at one that was our very last one of 2021 that Tim led and talked about his self-determination journey and how it's changed his life. So, we'll have that answer for you in just a moment. While we're waiting for Tim to respond, I'm going to go to Lulu. Go ahead, Lulu.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Sí, buenas tardes. Yo quiero preguntarle y comentar, ¿verdad? Usted decía que un plan centrado en la persona se hizo por $800. Por ejemplo, yo estoy en el condado de Orange y en este centro regional especialmente, yo no sé si en todos pasa lo mismo, pero debido a las directivas, los centros regionales hacen muchas pólizas que impiden que todo esto se agilice. Entonces, realmente para conseguir un servicio estamos yendo una y otra vez.
Right.
hablar de un servicio y luego vamos a fair hearing y luego regresamos por otro servicio y todo esto es apoyados con el facilitador. Entonces, como un facilitador podría, entiendo que es el plan centrado en la persona, pero para conseguir el servicio y llegar a que empiece a que se esté trabajando, que una persona, un cliente entre a autodeterminación, hay que seguir todo este proceso. Entonces, si sumamos y restamos y todo lo que es el costo de todo esto, los facilitadores tienen que cobrar 8 o 10 mil dólares porque es demasiado tiempo muchas veces ir a audiencias. Entonces, ¿cómo se puede hacer esto de cobrar tan poco? ¿Cuál es la idea de...? No me queda claro. ¿Cuál sería la manera de trabajar esto?
Yeah. Thank you, Lulu. That's a great question. So that's why it's really important that when you choose an independent facilitator, you make sure that the person-centered planning process is not going to eat up your whole $2,500 budget, because usually the facilitator needs to spend a lot more time actually advocating for you in the budget process, in the spending plan process. That takes a whole lot more time than actually the person-centered plan. The person-centered plan, honestly, my son's maybe we spent about 5 or 6 hours total on it. It didn't take a long time. Not everybody's going to have that short of time. My son still lives with me, so his life is not as complex as somebody who lives on their own. But the big hard part was getting a budget that reflects what his needs are and getting a spending plan that really talks about what we need to do. So you just want to make sure, Lulu, that you are not using all of your funding for the actual creation of that person-centered plan, and that you negotiate with the facilitator and say, I refuse to spend any more than $500, $600 on the actual plan because I want to save all the rest of the money for you to help me with the advocacy and the other work that we need to do. So thank you for that question. How about another question from the chat, Ed?
Absolutely, we have tons of them. Our next question is actually a pair of questions that essentially boil down to, can the self-determination program cover legal planning?
Legal, it depends. I don't know exactly what you mean by legal planning, but remember, once again, everything that you needs to have a part of the IPP goal that it's meeting. So if legal planning relates to, I don't know, getting access to a generic resource like SSI, and so you're hiring a lawyer to help you with that, I actually think that's a very legitimate expense to put in your spending plan. If it's for conservatorship, I'm not sure if that's part of the IPP process, okay? So I'm not sure that that would be a legitimate expense. If it's for creating a special needs trust, you would need to have that in the IPP laid out. Like, what is the person's goal for them to need a special needs trust and the amount of money that it costs for that? You have to make the argument in the person-centered planning process and in the IPP that there are needs that those are the kinds of needs you have. So I'm not going to say yes or no whether anything can be. I never say yes, you can pay for it in the plan. Acupuncture is the very first thing on the very first. You look at the list of services, acupuncture is in there. But I'm not going to say that acupuncture can be paid for in self-determination, because if it doesn't meet one of the IPP goals, then it cannot be paid for. So remember that.
And Judy, I just want to say that one of these question askers specified that this was actually to support supported decision-making, which we love to hear.
Yes. So first of all, we are experts on supported decision-making, and you do not need a lawyer to do supported decision-making for you. That's the whole point of supported decision-making, that it is not, that you do not have to hire a lawyer. Now, I don't actually believe you need to pay anyone to help you with supported decision-making. You can take some of our trainings and you can learn about it. But there are lots of ways that you can get that kind of support to do supported decision-making. So I'm very excited that you're saying that, and you do not need to hire a lawyer. Eliza, you're going to need to ask your question in like 1 minute, because then we only have 2 minutes to answer you.
Hi, I was told, I'm trying to get SDP approved, and was told that anything, if it's for a religious project, it is not okay. So for example, confirmation classes with peers that are typical would not be allowed because it's specifically a division of church and state. Like they can't encourage a religion. Same with Sunday school classes.
I have not heard that. I don't see anything written that prohibits that. Once again, it needs to meet an IPP goal. So, but I have not heard that at all. That's definitely something I will ask about. I do not have an answer of whether something like a religious Sunday school can be paid for. So I am not sure. Let me try to get back to you. So the last word is actually going to come from Tim Jin, who's going to answer Nushin's question about why the SDP is a good thing to do. And while Tim is finishing up his answer, I saw in the chat that somebody wanted to know where there's a list of FMSs and services. Everything is on the DDS website. Okay, go to the DDS website and look up self-determination, and all of that information is on there. It's also on our interchange. All of this information is on the interchange that DVU has. Go ahead, Tim, you get the last word.
I've been living on my own for over 20 years, and it's always been a rough patch of my life in the traditional system with the SLS agency, because they had way too many rules that didn't cater to me because I personally don't have any behavior issues. Now that I'm in self-determination program, I am totally in charge. For instance, I just had lunch today in Los Angeles with my colleague and I took my staff. If I was with an agency, I needed to ask permission from a supervisor at the agency, and that's no way to be in charge of your life, because I don't ask my parents permission either, nor they want me to ask. Yes, since your adult child is about to move out, it will be good to start self-determination, because they will be in charge of their lives. Total freedom.
Thank you, Tim. That was a phenomenal way to end today. Total freedom. And we promise, and I know we, yes. Real quick, because we're losing our Spanish interpreter right now. So, yes, it should be. Yes, it should be. Yes. Yes. Thank you, Helen. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Helen and Lorna, as always, and our staff. And we hope to see you all in 2 weeks, and we will try to get to as many questions as we can. Thank you, everybody. Take care.